Welcome to the stillness of time, a quiet journey through history, told softly for rest. Tonight we begin not with noise or conquest, but with calm, with the silence that lives behind all great moments. In every century, beyond the sound of armies or the rise of empires, there has always been another rhythm, the rhythm of stillness, of breath, of time moving gently forward. As you lie back, let your breathing slow. Let the air around you grow warm and kind. The world outside will wait. For now, there is only this, a voice, a story, and the steady hum of time. Our story begins in a place of soft light, long ago, beneath the grey skies of England. The year is far behind us now, lost to the folds of history. A palace stands at the edge of the river, quiet in the morning mist. Inside, a woman sits alone near a tall window, the fabric of her gown pooling around her like water. Her name is Elizabeth. The world remembers her as a queen, but tonight she is simply a person at rest, a figure within a moment of silence. The light touches her hair, pale gold against the shadows, and the room feels almost still enough to stop time. Outside, the day begins slowly. The river moves with the same patience it always has. The air smells faintly of rain and earth. Somewhere, far away, a bell rings once, then fades. The sound does not disturb her. She has learned to live with sound the way one lives with wind, letting it pass, never holding it too tightly. Her days have been long, years filled with letters, counsel, and decision. But here, in this quiet hour before anyone enters, she allows herself to simply breathe. Her thoughts drift not to battles or alliances, but to the steady rhythm of life itself. The way seasons turn, the way people come and go, the way time smooths even the sharpest edges. She moves her hand across the armrest of her chair, tracing a small carving worn smooth by generations before her. The wood feels warm beneath her skin, alive in its silence. There is comfort in that. Around her, the palace holds its breath. Servants move softly down distant corridors, their footsteps fading like echoes. The light outside shifts slightly, brushing the walls with the faint color of dawn. She closes her eyes and listens. Not for words, not for music, but for the soft pulse of life around her. It is said that she carried the weight of a kingdom, that she ruled through storms of doubt and threat. But in this moment, there is no crown, no court, no history waiting to be written. There is only the stillness of one person, breathing in rhythm with the world. This, too, is power. Not the power to command, but the power to be calm. The kind that asks for nothing and holds everything quietly. Time moves differently here. Minutes feel like hours, and hours like years. Outside the window, a bird lands upon the sill, its wings trembling with morning light. She watches it for a long time, smiling faintly. The world continues as it always does, but she does not rush to meet it. In this quiet, you can almost hear the echo of centuries, the same silence that has touched countless lives, across kingdoms, across oceans, across time. The same stillness that once lived in the breath of an ancient healer, in the patience of a craftsman, in the heart of a city reborn. It is all one thread, stretching endlessly, weaving the calm of all moments into the fabric of time. The light grows brighter now, soft gold upon her hands. She rises slowly, her gown whispering across the floor. For a moment, she stands still, the air around her warm and quiet, the world waiting for her to begin again. And somewhere, far beyond this room, time continues to move, not hurried, not loud, but steady, eternal, gentle. The early life of Elizabeth. In the quiet morning of September 1533, the air was pale and cool over the English countryside, and within the stone walls of Greenwich Palace, a child's cry echoed softly, new and fragile. The world outside stirred without knowing that the sound belonged to a girl who would one day be remembered as Elizabeth, the daughter of a king who longed for a son. In that first hour, she was not yet a queen, nor a figure of legend, but simply a small, breathing presence wrapped in linen, surrounded by the stillness of dawn. The fire in the hearth flickered gently, the curtains moved with the draught of autumn air, and a nurse hummed a tune meant only to calm a child too new to understand the world she had entered. Time in those years was slow and unhurried, moving like the light across the palace floors. Elizabeth grew in rooms filled with faint music and careful footsteps. She learned early the rhythm of silence, the way people spoke softly around her, the way her father's name carried both admiration and unease. Her mother's presence, once strong and vivid, faded from her life before she could remember the sound of her voice. Around her, the adults spoke in measured tones, their words carrying the shape of decisions far too large for a child to comprehend. Yet she absorbed it all. The quiet tension, the delicate poise, the understanding that the world could shift like a shadow without warning. Her tutors came when she was still young, bringing books written in languages old and precise. She learned Latin before she could fully understand her own world, her mind sharp and attentive, her patience deep. She sat by the window as lessons filled the day, the sunlight moving across the pages, the faint sound of quills scratching. Her teachers saw in her a stillness that was not coldness, but focus, a kind of calm that seemed beyond her years. They spoke of her mind, her grace, her manner, and the way she never rushed to speak, choosing words as carefully as if each were a stone placed along a path. Beyond her studies, there were gardens, long stretches of green where the air smelled of earth and rain. She would walk there when lessons ended, her steps light against the grass, her eyes tracing the clouds as they drifted across the wide English sky. The seasons changed softly around her, spring with its pale blossoms, summer with its hum of insects and warmth, autumn with falling leaves that moved like whispers. She grew tall, slender, quiet, carrying within her the patience of someone who had learned early that the world's gentlest things often held the most strength. At court, she watched more than she spoke. The halls were filled with silks and jewels, but also with watchful eyes. Power, she learned, was not always loud. It was often quiet, dressed in smiles that did not reach the eyes, hidden in the way one person bowed or another remained standing. She listened to the music of diplomacy long before she ever played its notes. The sound of her father's footsteps in the corridor could change the air itself, turning ease into formality, laughter into restraint. She learned the art of stillness, to stand, to wait, to observe without being seen too clearly. When her mother was gone, she did not weep for what she could not recall. The memory of Anne was made of stories told by others, fragments of gestures, a scent of perfume that lingered faintly in old fabrics. Instead, Elizabeth turned her attention to the world that remained, to her books, her lessons, her tutors, and the small comforts of her surroundings. In solitude, she found rhythm. In silence, she found understanding. The walls that contained her were high, but her mind moved freely beyond them. Years passed, measured not by great events but by quiet days, by the turning of pages, the soft scratch of pen and parchment, the slow drift of clouds. The storms of the court sometimes touched her life but never swept her away. She learned caution, restraint, and the quiet art of endurance. Those around her saw only a girl of delicate grace, but within she carried a calm that would one day anchor a nation. When her father passed and the throne changed hands, Elizabeth's life shifted again, though she moved through it with the same still composure. She became a figure within larger stories, the sister of one monarch, the half-sister of another, always near power, but not yet its keeper. Each new ruler meant a new way of being, a new kind of silence. She spoke when spoken to, smiled when it was safe, and retreated when the air grew sharp with politics. Through it all, she kept learning. Languages, history, music, philosophy, they became her sanctuary, her quiet rebellion against the uncertainty that surrounded her. She played the lute softly in the evenings, her fingers tracing patterns of melody, while her thoughts drifted to far places she might never see. She read by candlelight, her face calm, her eyes steady, the light flickering across the page. As she entered adulthood, the world began to see her differently, though she remained steady, never hurried by the expectations of others. She was, as one tutor once wrote, a mind like still water. The reflection within was deep and clear, though few ever saw its full depth. She moved through corridors and gardens as if she belonged to both and neither, part of the world yet slightly apart from it, shaped by time, patience, and thought. There were moments when her future seemed uncertain, but she did not dwell on them. The crown, if it ever came, would arrive in its own time, and she would meet it as she met everything, with quiet acceptance. In those early years, she was already learning to wait, and in waiting, to understand. Evening would come to the palace, the sun slipping low beyond the river, the sky turning soft with color. The halls grew quiet again, footsteps fading, voices dimming to murmurs. Elizabeth would sit near a window, the glow of candlelight warming her face, and the world would fall away into peace. Outside, the night stretched endless and gentle, stars emerging one by one, steady and patient in their light. And so her childhood closed, not with a moment of triumph or loss, but with the same steady calm with which it had begun. A breath between eras, a pause in the rhythm of history. The girl who had learned silence would one day speak, but not yet. For now, there was only the quiet passage of time, the long, even pulse of destiny moving unseen beneath the stillness. The calm reign of Elizabeth. The years moved forward like the slow unfolding of dawn. The restless currents of her youth quieted, and Elizabeth stepped into the vast and measured world of rule. It came to her not with thunder, but like the slow rising of the tide, the way morning light creeps across the floor of a quiet room. When the crown was placed upon her head, the weight of it was less than the silence that followed, a silence filled with the expectation of 1,000 unspoken thoughts. The room was hushed, the air still, and her heart calm. She had been shaped by patience, and now patience would. In the first years, her days began early. The corridors of the palace echoed softly with the sound of servants, parchment, and voices speaking in low tones. Elizabeth listened, always listening. She did not rush to speak, and when she did, her words carried the measured rhythm of someone who had learned to think before sound. The rhythm of the kingdom began to mirror her own, a pulse both steady and restrained. Decisions were made not in bursts of impulse, but through long and careful thought. She surrounded herself with people who understood her quiet ways. The halls of power were no longer filled with loudness or spectacle, but with the subdued hum of activity, the gentle discipline of order. There was music in the evenings, but it was never loud. It drifted through the chambers like a sigh, viols and lutes mingling with the crackle of firelight. Even in ceremony, her movements were deliberate, her gestures small, her gaze unwavering. She had learned the strength of stillness, and in her stillness, others found certainty. Outside, the country breathed again. The storms that had passed before her reign left the land weary, and in her quiet governance, England found its rhythm. Trade ships began to move once more along the coasts, sails like white wings against the grey sky. Farmers tended their fields with the comfort of routine, craftsmen returned to their work, and in towns across the realm, markets opened, voices rising in soft harmony. It was not the clamour of empire, but the hum of life returning, the deep and steady sound of stability. Elizabeth ruled not through command alone, but through presence. Her composure became her language. She stood as if time itself slowed in her company, and those who approached her felt the weight of her calm. In council, she listened long and spoke little, her eyes following the drift of sunlight across the table, the sound of parchment being turned, the scent of ink and wax. When she did speak, it was as though she had distilled hours of thought into a single line, and when her words were finished, silence followed naturally, like a closing door. The palace became an island of stillness amid the restless sea of the age. Visitors from distant lands found in her court a quiet order that seemed almost unreal, a rhythm different from their own worlds. They wrote of her grace, of the way she moved through the room with neither haste nor pause, and of the strange peace that seemed to linger in her presence. It was not the peace of idleness, but of balance, the kind found in music that never rushes, in waves that rise and fall without end. Evenings were long and gentle. Candlelight shimmered on polished wood, the scent of beeswax mingling with the faint perfume of flowers brought in from the garden. Elizabeth would sit near the hearth, letters and documents spread before her, her pen tracing steady lines upon the page. Beyond the window, the wind moved through the trees, their leaves brushing softly against stone. From time to time, she would pause, her gaze distant, but not lost, her thoughts stretching far beyond the walls. Seasons continued to turn, each one bringing its quiet rituals. Spring came with the murmurs of planting and renewal, summer with long days filled with golden light. Autumn arrived cloaked in soft mist, and winter settled with its own serenity. Fires burning low, frost gathering upon the window panes, the sound of the river slowing beneath the cold. Through it all, Elizabeth's world remained measured, each moment folded carefully into the next. Her reign was not without challenge, but even those moments arrived and passed like shadows crossing water. Where others might have sought noise or triumph, she chose steadiness. She believed in time, in its ability to reveal truth without force. And so the years layered gently one upon another, and England began to glow with a quiet prosperity. Artists painted, poets wrote, the stage came alive with verse and laughter, but even those echoes seemed softened by the atmosphere of her age. The grandeur of her time was not in conquest, but in continuity, the long, even hum of a kingdom at peace with itself. In portraits, she was often shown surrounded by symbols of strength and wisdom, yet behind the painted eyes one might imagine the silence of her thoughts. Not loneliness, but reflection. She had lived long within her own mind, and that solitude had become her companion. The stillness others saw as distance was her way of listening to the deeper rhythm of her people, the sound of a country finding its breath again. At night, the palace would grow hushed. Footsteps faded, the fires dimmed, and only the soft murmur of guards on their rounds disturbed the quiet. Elizabeth would sometimes walk alone through the corridors, her hand trailing lightly along the cool stone. She would pause by the windows where the moonlight poured across the floor, silver and still. The garden outside shimmered faintly, the air crisp, the fountains whispering to themselves. In those moments, the Queen and the night seemed made of the same stillness. There were days when she would remember the girl she once was, reading by candlelight, watching the sky from her window, dreaming of what might come. The path between that girl and this woman was long, but it had always moved in the same direction, shaped by patience, discipline, and quiet strength. The crown had not changed her nature, it had only deepened it. As the years went by, her rule became like a steady heartbeat at the center of her kingdom. Those who lived through it would later speak of peace, of balance, of a rare sense of constancy. Time itself seemed to move differently, slower perhaps, as though matching the rhythm of her steady hand. And so as night returns to the imagined halls of that long-ago England, one might picture her there, seated beside the fire, her face calm, her eyes thoughtful, her pen resting upon the page. The air is still, the sound of the world beyond the walls faint and far away. History, for a moment, holds its breath. In the warmth of that quiet rain, England slept in peace, and time itself, it seemed, slept with it. The golden age and legacy of Elizabeth. The years of her reign unfolded like a long and gentle summer, each season carrying its own soft rhythm, each day gliding into the next without haste. The air of England seemed to breathe differently then, fuller somehow, as though the land itself had settled into a quiet confidence. In the towns and cities, people worked and spoke with calm purpose. The markets hummed, the fields ripened, the ports filled with ships, and the streets were alive with the steady murmur of ordinary life. There were no great bursts of noise, no constant clash of ambition, but rather a patient harmony, like the measured chords of a lute played softly in the afternoon. Elizabeth moved through this world with a still grace. She understood that rule was not the same as movement. It was a kind of balance, a stillness that guided others without force. The council meetings, the letters, the audiences, all came and went with the rhythm of her will, deliberate and even. She had grown accustomed to the language of waiting, of letting events unfold until they revealed their own shape. It was this patience that came to define her time, a patience that let art and learning take root where conflict might have grown. In London, new theatres rose from timber and imagination. Within them, words took flight, not in shouts or sermons, but in measured lines that explored the quiet depth of what it meant to live and dream. The city's evenings glowed with torchlight, the hum of voices blending with the scent of earth and rain. Actors moved upon wooden stages, their voices steady, their stories reaching from the smallest child to the most seasoned listener. Somewhere among the crowd, one might imagine Elizabeth's own thoughts moving with the rhythm of the lines, her mind tracing the cadence of poetry, her heart calm within the stillness of words. Music too filled her age, the viol, the virginal, the lute, all spoke softly in the halls of her court. Melodies drifted through the air, carrying no sorrow, only reflection. Composers wrote pieces that mirrored the atmosphere of her reign, steady, intricate, and full of light. The notes rose and fell like breath, woven together in patience. It was a sound not of triumph, but of peace. Outside the walls of the palace, England looked outward again. Ships slipped quietly from their harbours, their sails rising like pale wings against the horizon. The sea stretched endless and blue, a mirror to the sky. Sailors worked in rhythm with the tide, their movements calm, their voices blending with the wind. The age of exploration had begun not in thunder, but in the whisper of waves. Across the oceans, maps grew wider, lines drawn with careful ink, tracing the edges of a world still being discovered. Yet even these journeys, vast and daring, felt touched by the same unhurried patience that defined the woman who reigned at their center. At home, the arts and sciences bloomed in their quiet way. Scholars wrote by candlelight, their pens steady, their rooms filled with the faint smell of ink and parchment. Painters studied the soft play of light upon fabric and skin. Architects measured their lines, shaping buildings meant to endure not just time, but silence. Every creation, every craft seemed to echo the steady heartbeat of an age, content to grow without noise. Elizabeth herself grew older, though time touched her gently. The face that had once been youthful and bright became serene, carved with the lines of long thought and long rule. The eyes, still steady, carried within them the reflection of decades. She had become more than a monarch. She had become the still point of her nation, the figure at the center of its calm. The people, when they spoke her name, did so with a kind of quiet reverence, not of fear, but of familiarity, and as one might speak of the seasons or the sea. As the years passed, she began to withdraw a little more into solitude. The great gatherings still occurred, but she spent longer hours in her chambers, surrounded by letters and memories. The sound of quills on paper, the murmur of voices beyond the door, the soft rustle of silk. These became the music of her later life. She would look from her window and see the gardens stretching below, the air filled with the hum of bees, the soft movement of leaves in the wind. The world outside remained alive, but she had become a quiet observer of it, content in the knowledge that it moved without her hand. Her thoughts often turned to time, not as an enemy, but as a companion. Time had given her all that she possessed, her patience, her composure, her understanding of balance. It had also taken what it must, yet even loss felt softened by the long, calm passage of her days. She knew that the end of her reign would come, as all things do, not in storm, but in stillness. And that, too, seemed right. The legacy she left was not a monument of stone or conquest. It was quieter than that, woven into the air, the art, the language, and the rhythm of life itself. It lingered in the way people spoke, in the way they paused between words, in the measured tones of a society that had learned, from its queen, the strength of composure. The Elizabethan age, they would later call it, though she herself never named it so, an age of light, of sound, of quiet mastery. As her final years approached, the court still gathered, the music still played, and letters still arrived in neat stacks upon her desk. She continued to read them, one by one, her eyes tracing each line with care. She answered not in haste, but in her familiar rhythm, slow and deliberate. The days shortened, the air cooled, and the golden glow of her time began to fade softly, like sunlight through autumn leaves. When she grew tired, she would rest beside the window, the light falling gently across her face. Outside, the river flowed, calm and silver beneath the sky. The sound of distant bells carried through the air, a soft echo marking the close of day. It was said that she once remarked, long ago, that stillness was her companion, and so it remained, from the first breath of her reign to the last sigh of its twilight. Her name would endure, but she had never sought it. She had lived her years like the steady flame of a candle that burns without flicker, not to dazzle, but to illuminate, quietly. In that light, England found its peace, and the world turned gently onward, holding within its motion the memory of her calm. The night fell, and the torches of the palace burned low. The corridors lay empty, the echoes fading. In the long silence that followed, one could almost hear the breath of history settling, the slow and endless rhythm of time continuing its course. And so the golden age rested, serene, like a great ocean at dusk, its waves soft, its light dim but enduring, its story carried forward on the quiet wind of remembrance. Ancient Egypt. Everyday healing. Beyond the soft shores of time, far from the grey skies of England, there lies another place where the sun rises differently, casting its light upon sand and stone. In the early morning of ancient Egypt, the air is warm but calm, touched by a breeze that moves like breath across the desert. The horizon glows with pale gold, and the river, the slow, eternal Nile, drifts through the silence. It carries the scent of life, of water upon earth, the sound of oars dipping in rhythm. On its banks the world begins to wake, not with noise, but with the quiet pulse of habit and care. In a small village, houses of mud brick stand close together, their walls cool from the night. Inside, the day begins gently. Clay jars are opened, herbs are measured, and water is drawn from wells. The healers of this land do not rush. Their work, like the river, moves in its own steady flow. They begin with observation, the color of skin, the tone of breath, the warmth of the body beneath their hand. Each detail speaks softly, and they listen. Healing to them is not battle, but understanding. They know the rhythm of the human body as they know the rhythm of the seasons. They have watched it since childhood, the way fever comes and fades like the sun, the way wounds close under time and care, the way rest itself can become medicine. Their tools are simple: linen cloth, stone bowls, pestles worn smooth from years of grinding. Within these bowls they mix honey and herbs, oils pressed from flowers and seeds. The scents rise into the air, sweet, clean, and ancient. The healers work in quiet spaces. A mat upon the floor, a basin of water nearby, sunlight filtering through woven reeds. The room hums with the sound of life. Soft breathing, the faint creak of wood, the distant murmur of the river outside. Each movement is slow, each action deliberate. A hand dips into water, wrings a cloth, presses it gently to skin. A voice murmurs calm words, not of ritual, but of reassurance. There is no urgency here, only the steady care of one human tending another. Outside, life moves in parallel rhythm. Farmers guide their cattle to the fields. Fishermen prepare their nets. The sound of footsteps mixes with the call of birds, the low hum of insects, the rustle of reeds along the Nile's edge. The entire landscape seems to move as one, people, water, wind, all turning together beneath the patient gaze of the sun. When someone falls ill, they are not seen as broken, but as part of this great rhythm slightly out of tune. The healer's work is to listen to the song and help it return to balance. Sometimes that means herbs steeped in warm water, or oils rubbed gently into the skin. Sometimes it means rest, a quiet space, a change of air. Healing is not a moment of triumph, but a process of return. Slow, natural, inevitable. In the larger towns, near the great temples and markets, the craft of healing becomes more intricate. There are records written upon papyrus, long rolls of careful script that speak of the body in all its mystery. There are lists of herbs and minerals, measurements of heartbeats, notes about the pulse of life that flows through veins unseen. The healers write not for fame, but for continuity, passing knowledge forward like the light of one lamp rekindling another. Among them there are midwives, physicians, and herbalists, each with their own quiet mastery. The midwives move through narrow streets at dawn, their hands steady, their voices calm. They have seen life begin countless times and know that birth, like the river, follows its own rhythm. The physicians walk with small satchels filled with tools and herbs, visiting homes where the air smells of bread and smoke. Their arrival brings a sense of calm, not alarm. Their words are measured, their eyes kind. The people trust them not as miracle workers, but as companions of nature. They do not promise perfection, they promise attention, patience, and care. In the soft light of evening, when the day cools and the shadows lengthen, the healer might sit outside their home, grinding seeds for the next day's work. The mortar's steady rhythm matches the heartbeat of the world. A neighbor passes, a child laughs, a bird calls from the palm trees, and life continues. Simple, rhythmic, whole. Along the riverbanks, plants grow in abundance, some for food, others for healing. The healers know them by scent and texture. The cooling leaves of mint, the soothing roots of marsh plants, the golden resin drawn from trees. They keep them stored in jars, labeled with symbols known to few. Their fingers trace these signs with familiarity, not as superstition, but as the memory of practice. At dusk, the Nile mirrors the fading light. Boats glide slowly across its surface, their sails catching the last color of the sun. Villagers gather near the shore, their voices blending into the hum of twilight. Children run barefoot through dust that glows gold in the dying light. Smoke from small fires curls upward, carrying the smell of cooking grain and herbs. Somewhere in the distance, a healer closes a jar, sets it upon a shelf, and steps outside to breathe the evening air. The night in Egypt is wide and warm. Stars appear above the river like scattered embers. The world is silent, except for the faint rustle of wind over the sand. In that stillness, the healer rests. Tomorrow will bring more lives to tend, more bodies to understand, more quiet acts of balance. There is no fame, no wealth, no celebration, only the calm satisfaction of harmony restored. Time moves gently here. Days pass like ripples upon water, blending one into another. Centuries may fall away, yet the rhythm remains the same. Healing is an art of patience, of seeing the body not as separate from the earth, but as its reflection. In this land where the desert meets the river, every heartbeat is part of the same quiet pulse that has moved through generations. And so, under the vast canopy of the night, the healers of ancient Egypt rest beside the river that never sleeps, their tools laid aside, their minds at peace. The work is endless but never urgent, the kind that continues not because it must, but because it belongs. The world breathes and time drifts onward, carrying their quiet art into memory. A legacy of care so gentle it might be mistaken for silence. Ancient Egypt, the gentle art of care. The day begins again along the slow river, as it always has. The first light spreads across the sand, turning the edges of the desert into gold. The Nile glimmers, calm and endless, its surface moving like the breath of the earth itself. The sound of water against stone fills the air, joined by the distant call of cranes as they rise into the pale morning sky. Life awakens not with noise, but with rhythm. The quiet movement of people stepping into the day, repeating gestures that have carried meaning for centuries. In a small courtyard shaded by woven mats, a healer arranges their instruments. The tools are simple: bowls of polished stone, jars of fragrant oil, cloths folded neatly beside a basin of cool water. Each one has been touched by countless hands, used with the same careful precision through the years. The air smells of herbs, crushed leaves, resin, and honey, a blend both sweet and earthy, drifting softly through the heat. The healer begins with the same calm focus each morning brings. There is no rush, no noise. They sit quietly for a while, watching the light fall upon the wall, listening to the faint hum of the village around them. A child's laughter echoes down the street, a dog barks once, and then all returns to stillness. The healer believes that understanding begins with silence. To listen to the world before touching it is to know its balance. When someone arrives seeking help, they are welcomed with warmth and patience. There are no grand gestures, no promises of miracles, only quiet attention. The healer observes, noting the way a person breathes, the color of their eyes, the strength of their pulse beneath the skin. The body tells its story without words. The healer listens, not as one searching for secrets, but as one who understands that healing is already written within the person, waiting only to be guided back into place. A jar is opened and the scent of oil rises, smooth and clean. A cloth is dipped, wrung out, and placed upon the forehead of the patient. The room is filled with the faint sound of dripping water, the slow rhythm of breath. Outside, the day grows brighter, but here, time moves differently. It stretches, soft and long, as though each moment has been allowed to unfold without interference. The healer speaks little, for words are not always needed. The motion of the hands, the steady repetition of care, carries its own language. To touch the skin with kindness, to wrap a bandage with patience, to wait beside the bed until the rhythm of breathing steadies. This is the art of care. It is not an act of conquest, but of presence. Later, when the work is done, the healer may step outside into the sunlight. The warmth touches their face, and they watch the flow of people along the street. Farmers pass with baskets balanced on their shoulders, women carry water in jars, children chase one another through dust that glows in the light. The healer feels the same quiet satisfaction that comes not from victory, but from harmony. To care for another is to join, for a time, in the rhythm of their life, to steady what has faltered, to remind the body of what it already knows, how to be whole. In the villages along the river, this understanding is shared. Each household knows a little of healing, how to cool a fever with wet cloths, how to mix a soothing balm from herbs and honey, how to rest when the heat becomes too strong. Knowledge flows through the community like the Nile itself, connecting one home to the next, carrying wisdom not in books, but in gestures, in stories, in memory. As evening comes, the air cools and softens. The healer gathers their tools, cleans each one carefully, and places them back upon the shelf. Nothing is hurried, nothing is wasted. The mortar and pestle are wiped clean, the herbs covered, the bowls arranged in perfect quiet order. In the fading light, everything seems to glow. The polished stone, the smooth surface of the jars, the reflection of the last sunlight upon water. The room holds a silence that feels alive. Outside, the night deepens. The stars appear once more above the desert, steady and unblinking. A breeze moves through the palms and the river continues its endless journey toward the sea. Somewhere, a song drifts from another house, a low melody sung to a child. It carries through the warm air like a lullaby, the kind that has no beginning and no end. The healer listens for a moment, then smiles faintly, the expression soft and fleeting. For them, care is not only work, but a way of being. Every small act, preparing herbs, pouring water, tending a wound, becomes part of the same quiet devotion to life itself. The boundary between body and world fades. What is healed in one becomes balance in the other. In this way, the healer is not apart from their craft, but lives within it, as the river lives within the land. When sleep comes that night, it arrives easily. The mind carries no burden, the body no unrest. The healer dreams not of grand visions, but of the same small perfect moments. Light upon water, the feel of smooth linen beneath the hand, the scent of crushed mint in a bowl. The dreams are gentle, without urgency, and when morning returns, they will wake with calm purpose once more. Time in this world does not hurry. The same actions repeat, the same patterns renew, the same care continues, unbroken by the years. There is comfort in the repetition, as though each day were a verse in an endless poem of kindness. The art of care is not innovation, but remembrance, the steady returning to what has always been known. And so the healer's story blends with all the others, with the farmers and the boatmen, with the mothers and the children. Together they form the living pulse of Egypt, a civilization not defined by monuments alone, but by the quiet constancy of those who tended life with their hands. Their art was simple, but in its simplicity lay its grace. As the night folds once more over the desert and the river whispers through the dark, the healer's world returns to silence. The air cools, the stars drift slowly overhead, and time becomes soft again, like sand beneath the tide. What remains is not the sound of work, but the feeling of peace, the enduring warmth of care that, though unseen, never truly ends. Berlin, a city divided. Far from the golden deserts of the past, time drifts forward again, carrying us to another place, another silence. The air changes, cooler now, touched by stone and rain. The year is newer, but the rhythm remains the same. We arrive in a city once whole, now split by a line that runs through its heart like a quiet scar. Berlin, a place of streets and windows, of whispers and waiting, of walls built not of distance, but of separation. The morning begins grey and soft. The sky hangs low, the colour of smoke. Light filters through it gently, falling across the rooftops, catching the edges of wet pavement. Somewhere, a tram bell rings, distant and hollow. The streets are nearly empty, save for the slow movement of people walking to work, their steps even, their faces calm. The city is divided, but life continues, it always does. On one side, buildings rise in perfect order, straight lines, clean corners, quiet efficiency. On the other, colour lingers still, though faded by years. The sound of footsteps is the same in both, a rhythm that belongs neither to one nor the other, but to Berlin itself. A child laughs near a doorway, a woman opens a shop. A man pauses to light a cigarette, the flames small and bright against the grey morning. These are not moments of history, but of ordinary peace, found even in the shadow of separation. As the day unfolds, the city hums in its restrained way. Cars pass slowly, their tires whispering over wet roads. Bicycles glide past, the faint click of gears steady as breath. Somewhere behind walls and fences, trains move through tunnels, unseen but always there, their low sound vibrating through the stone beneath the streets. Above, the clouds drift eastward, soft and unbroken. Along the border that divides the city, silence has a sound of its own. There is no music here, only the quiet weight of air, the steady presence of concrete. A wall stands tall, stretching across fields and streets, through gardens and alleyways, its surface cold to the touch. Yet even here, life persists in its gentle defiance. Grass grows along its base, Birds perch upon its edge, their feathers ruffled by the wind. Sometimes at dusk the faint call of an evening songbird echoes against the concrete, carrying for a moment over both sides. Those who live near the wall learn to move through their days with calm endurance. They cook, they clean, they speak softly, they watch the seasons turn, the snow gathering in winter, the flowers returning in spring. They do not speak much of the barrier. It is simply there, like weather, a condition of existence. Still within them, a quiet longing hums beneath the surface, not of rebellion, but of memory. The sense that the city was once whole, that footsteps once echoed freely from one street to another. In the evenings, windows glow with soft light. Curtains move with the wind, and from within, music drifts. A record playing slowly, a piano touched by patient hands. The notes cross invisible boundaries, fading into the night air. People sit near their windows, listening, imagining faces they cannot see, voices they can no longer reach. There is sadness, yes, but also gentleness, a kind of peace found in the act of remembering. On quiet nights, the air is clear enough to see the stars. They hang above both sides of the city, unmoved by walls or fences. Their light falls evenly upon all things, upon the empty streets, the sleeping children, the watchful guards, the lovers whispering behind closed doors. The sky does not divide, it belongs to everyone. There are stories that move quietly beneath the surface of this time. Stories of letters carried in secret, of voices shared through static-filled radios, of people standing in the same place, separated by only a few meters and a lifetime. But these stories, like so many in history, are carried not in shouting, but in whispers. They survive because someone remembers them in silence. Day after day, the city continues to breathe. In the markets, vendors arrange their fruit with care. The bright colors are small defiance against grey skies. In schools, children write in neat lines, their pens moving steadily, their laughter filling the air. In factories, machines hum a constant rhythm, echoing the pulse of work and time. Life does not stop for walls. It adjusts, it softens, it finds new paths. In the western streets, cafes stay open late. The air smells of coffee and bread, the sound of conversation low and warm. In the east, courtyards glow with lamplight, and neighbors share food across balconies. The human heart, it seems, continues to reach across boundaries even when hands cannot. There is a beauty in that persistence, quiet but strong, like the river that flows beneath the bridges, unchanged by the barriers above. As the years pass, the wall weathers under rain and wind. Its surface fades, marked by time, touched by color, where someone unseen has painted in the night. A line of blue, a stroke of red, a word half written. Small traces of expression left upon stone. The wall stands, but it listens. The city, beneath its restraint, still dreams of wholeness. Winter returns and snow falls softly upon the rooftops. The streets are hushed, footsteps muffled beneath the white. The river moves slowly, carrying flakes downstream, each one catching the faint light of the city. Behind windows, fires burn low and people gather close, speaking quietly of ordinary things, of work, of family, of the weather. Outside, Berlin sleeps beneath its divided sky. Even in its separation, there is grace. The city endures with dignity, with patience. It does not break. It waits, not with bitterness, but with the calm endurance that comes from having seen many winters, many mornings, many returns. The wall may stand for a time, but time itself belongs to no one. It continues to move, steady and indifferent, wearing down even the hardest stone. And so the people of Berlin continue, walking, breathing, living within the rhythm of their days. The wall remains a line in space, but it cannot stop the sound of laughter, or the wind, or the quiet murmur of life. Beyond the division, the city still belongs to itself. When night falls at last, and the air turns still, Berlin becomes again what it has always been, a place of lights, of shadows, of human presence. The streets shimmer faintly in the dark, and above them the stars hold steady. The city sleeps, divided perhaps in form, but not in spirit, waiting in silence for the day it will awaken whole once more. Berlin, the quiet night of change. The night came slowly to Berlin, as it always did, the kind of night that holds its breath before anything happens. The air was cool, the sky the color of slate, and a thin mist drifted through the narrow streets. Lights glowed faintly in windows, golden squares against the grey. Somewhere in the distance, a radio murmured, its sound softened by walls. People moved quietly, unaware that this night would be different from the rest. For years, the city had lived in two halves, each side a reflection of the other, both filled with the same quiet endurance. The wall stood between them, solid and still, a long shadow across time. But even stone grows tired, and even silence has an ending. The people had waited for so long that waiting itself had become a rhythm, as natural as the ticking of a clock. And then, one evening, the rhythm began to change. It did not happen with fanfare or sudden noise. It began as a murmur, faint as the first rustle of wind before dawn. Words passed quietly from one voice to another, rumors uncertain but full of hope. Someone had heard that the border might open, that perhaps at last the wall would no longer stand between them. The city held its breath. People stepped out into the cool air, gathering near the checkpoints, their faces calm but filled with a strange stillness, the kind that comes before tears, before laughter, before understanding. Guards stood uncertain, their voices low, their eyes shifting between the crowd and the night. The sound that filled the air was not shouting, but breathing. Thousands of people breathing together, waiting. And then, in that suspended silence, something gave way. A gate opened, a few people crossed, hesitantly at first, then more followed. There was no command, no announcement, just the quiet realization that something had changed, that the invisible line dividing the city had dissolved into air. The sound that rose was not a roar, but a low hum, like the deep vibration of the earth beneath one's feet. People began to walk, slowly, almost reverently, across the threshold. Strangers met in the middle of streets long forbidden, their hands reaching out as if to touch a dream. There were no speeches, no fireworks, only the soft sound of footsteps upon stone, the quiet laughter of disbelief, the gentle murmur of names spoken aloud after so many years. Some stood in place, tears on their faces, silent and unmoving. Others embraced with cautious joy, as though afraid the moment might vanish if they spoke too loudly. The night itself seemed to listen. The air was cool, the stars steady overhead, and the wall, once the symbol of division, now stood surrounded by human warmth. People touched its cold surface, running their hands along the stone, feeling the roughness beneath their fingers. It had been so solid, so final, and yet here it was, surrendering to time, to touch, to love. The sound of tools came next, hammers, chisels, fragments breaking free. Small pieces fell to the ground, each one landing with a soft, almost musical sound. It was not destruction, but release. Each strike was gentle, almost careful, as though no one wanted to harm the wall, only to free the city from its weight. Bits of concrete scattered like pale dust beneath the streetlights. The air filled with the faint scent of rain and stone. Across the city, word spread. People emerged from their homes, drawn by instinct more than knowledge. Families walked hand in hand toward the border, their breath visible in the cold. The hum of cars, the rhythm of footsteps, the soft murmuring of thousands of voices, all blended into one vast human sound. It was not celebration as much as awakening. In the western half, the streets glowed brighter, lights flickering on one by one. In the east, doors opened and faces appeared at windows, watching, uncertain but drawn forward. A man lifted his child onto his shoulders so she could see over the crowd. The little girl's eyes were wide, her small hand gripping her father's collar. She did not understand history, only that something immense and kind was happening. The river that ran through the city reflected it all. The lights, the motion, the quiet faces. The water moved slowly beneath the bridges, carrying the first fragments of paint and stone downstream, toward a place where walls meant nothing at all. As midnight neared, the air began to warm slightly as though the city itself were exhaling after a long, cold season. People continued to walk, to cross, to linger. Music began to rise, not from loudspeakers or bands, but from individual voices. A song hummed softly by one became a chorus of many, blending into the night air like mist. It was not a hymn or a protest. It was simply a human song made of relief and peace. The guards, still standing near their posts, began to lower their arms. Some smiled faintly, some joined the crowd. Their uniforms, their authority, seemed to fade into the background of shared humanity. For a few hours, no one gave orders and no one followed them. The world, for that moment, belonged to the people who walked together beneath the same stars. Dawn approached slowly, the faint light creeping along the horizon. The city, though exhausted, remained awake. The wall was no longer a line of stone, it was a memory being rewritten. The first light of morning touched its surface, revealing new colors, small gaps and open paths. Children ran their hands along the cracks, collecting fragments to keep. To them, it was not a monument or a ruin, but simply part of the world changing. As the sun rose, Berlin looked different, though its streets and buildings had not moved. What had shifted was invisible, a weight lifted, a silence broken, a new kind of stillness taking its place. People sat upon the remains of the wall, sharing bread, coffee, words. The sound of laughter returned to places that had known only echo. The wall did not fall with force, it dissolved with gentleness. Time, patient and persistent, had done its quiet work. And in the hush that followed, the city began to breathe again as one. By mid-morning, the streets were calm once more. The night's energy had softened into reflection. People walked home carrying small pieces of stone, their hands grey with dust, their hearts strangely light. The air was clear now, washed clean by tears and rain. Above, the sky stretched wide and bright, a single blue expanse without division. And somewhere, deep in the heart of Berlin, where silence had once felt heavy, peace settled like snow upon the ground. Soft, even, unbroken. The city, whole once more, exhaled. The Violin Maker, a life of quiet sound. In a quiet town nestled between low green hills, far from the noise of cities, there stands a small workshop at the corner of a cobbled street. Its windows are old and slightly clouded, and through them the golden light of morning spills across the wooden floor. Inside, the air smells of varnish, sawdust, and time itself. This is where the violin maker begins his day, as he has done for nearly 40 years. The workshop wakes slowly. Dust drifts lazily in the sunlight, tools rest neatly upon their pegs, and the faint creak of wood settles into the air like an old song. The man moves quietly through the space, each motion deliberate. He does not hurry. He sets water to boil for tea, arranges his chisels in a straight line, and runs a cloth across the surface of his workbench. The rhythm of these small acts is comforting, a language known only to him. A language of habit, of patience, of care. The violin maker's hands are strong but gentle. They have held thousands of pieces of wood, shaped them, smoothed them, coaxed sound from silence. He knows each type of timber by touch. The dense strength of maple, the softness of spruce, the subtle grain of willow. To him, the wood is alive. He listens to it, running his fingers along the curve of a piece, tapping it lightly with his knuckle to hear the faint echo within. Every sound tells him something, where to cut, where to thin, where to leave the wood untouched. Outside, the street begins to stir. The baker opens his shop across the square, and the scent of bread mingles with the air of varnish and resin. A bell rings softly from a distant tower. Life unfolds with the same slow rhythm it always has, and the violin maker, alone at his bench, smiles faintly. He has no need to rush toward the world. The world will come to him, one note at a time. He begins his work by tracing the outline of a violin upon a block of maple. His pencil moves lightly, guided by memory more than design. The shape is familiar, as if drawn from somewhere deep within him. Each curve, each corner, each delicate turn of line has been practiced for decades, until the motion itself has become a kind of meditation. When he begins to carve, the sound of the blade against the wood is soft and rhythmic, a whisper, a heartbeat. The shavings fall in curls to the floor, golden and fragrant. The violin maker works in silence, though in his mind there is always music. Not loud, not complex, but quiet melodies. Fragments of Bach, perhaps, or something older, something unnamed. He does not need to play them aloud. They are the music of his hands, of motion and breath. Each cut of the blade, each stroke of the file, feels like a note in a long, slow song. Hours pass unnoticed. The light shifts from gold to white, then to amber as the sun moves across the sky. He pauses only to sip his tea, now cooled, and to stretch his fingers. Outside, the voices of children echo faintly in the square, their laughter mixing with the cooing of pigeons. The sound reaches the workshop and lingers there for a moment before fading back into the hum of work. By afternoon, the violin's body has begun to take shape. The wood curves under his hand, its surface smooth as water. He holds it up to the light, turning it slowly, watching the grain catch the glow. Each mark tells a story of time, of growth, of wind and rain long past. The wood remembers and the violin maker listens. His work is not to impose, but to reveal, to free the sound that already sleeps within. When the carving is finished, he prepares the varnish, a mixture of oils and resins, warm and amber in color. The scent fills the room, rich and comforting. With a small brush, he applies it layer by layer, each stroke slow and even. The surface darkens, deepening into gold, then into a quiet glow that seems to breathe. The light from the window catches it, and for a moment, the violin seems almost alive. In the corner of the room stands a row of finished instruments, some new, some decades old, each one slightly different, yet all sharing the same quiet beauty. He runs his fingers along their necks as he passes, feeling the smoothness of their varnish, the faint vibration of strings touched by air. He does not think of them as his creations, but as companions. Things that have shared his breath, his silence, his years. As evening falls, the workshop grows dim. The sounds of the town fade. Footsteps, laughter, the last ring of the bell. The violin maker lights a small lamp, its glow soft and steady. He picks up one of his finished violins and sits by the window. For a long moment, he simply holds it, his hand resting on the polished wood. Then gently, he draws the bow across the strings. The first note is quiet, almost uncertain, like the whisper of wind through leaves. Then another follows and another. The sound fills the room, rich and warm. It is not loud, not meant for an audience. It is a private conversation between the man and his creation. Each tone carries within it the memory of the hours spent shaping, sanding, waiting. The air vibrates softly and the room becomes full, not of music alone, but of stillness shaped by sound. Outside, the moon has risen over the hills, casting pale light upon the rooftops. The violin maker plays on, slow and calm. He does not seek perfection, he seeks peace. The melody drifts through the open window, floating over the sleeping town, mingling with the sound of rustling trees and the quiet murmur of a distant river. When he stops, the silence that follows feels alive. It hums faintly, the echo of sound lingering like the afterglow of sunset. He lowers the violin onto his lap and looks at it for a moment, his face softened by the light. The wood gleams, the strings shimmer faintly, and somewhere in the heart of the instrument, a trace of music remains, waiting to be woken again. He sets it carefully upon the stand, cleans his tools, and blows out the lamp. The workshop returns to darkness, except for the faint shimmer of moonlight on the varnished wood. The air is warm, filled with the scent of resin and thyme. He steps outside, locking the door behind him. The street is silent now, the world wrapped in the stillness of night. The cobblestones shine faintly under the moon. He walks slowly, his steps soft, his hands still tinged with the scent of cedar and oil. In the quiet of that small town, the violin maker moves like a shadow of peace. His life is not grand but complete, measured not in days or years, but in the number of instruments that have carried his silence into sound. Somewhere, in another city, one of his violins is being played, and though he will never hear it, he knows the music, calm, clear, eternal, will continue long after he is gone. He stops once before his home, looks up at the stars, and breathes deeply. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and night. Inside, the lamp in his window glows softly. He enters, closes the door, and the world outside fades away. In the darkness of his sleep, perhaps he dreams of sound, not as music, but as movement, as breath, as life itself continuing quietly through time. And when the morning returns, as it always does, the light will touch the windows of his workshop once more, and the violin maker will begin again, slow, steady, peaceful, shaping silence into sound. The last song, Music That Never Ends. Night lingers in the quiet town, and in the small workshop at the corner of the square, the scent of varnish still floats faintly in the air. The violin rests upon its stand, glowing softly in the moonlight. The sound it once made has faded but not disappeared. It lingers, invisible, weightless, a vibration too delicate to be heard, still alive in the air. Somewhere beyond the hills, another violin plays, and another after that, the music carried by wind and memory, blending into something without beginning or end. Music, in its truest form, never stops. It moves through time the way light moves through water, bending, softening, finding new shapes. It drifts from hand to hand, from generation to generation, from the voice of one musician to the next. The violin maker may sleep, but his work continues, living in the hands of those who play, in the ears of those who listen, in the air that vibrates long after the last note fades. In a concert hall far from the quiet town, the seats fill slowly. The audience settles into stillness, the sound of their movement softening into silence. On the stage, a single chair waits in the light. The violinist steps forward, calm, composed, holding an instrument that gleams like amber beneath the glow. It might be one of his, the old man's work, shaped years ago by patience and time. The player lifts the bow, breathes once, and begins. The first note rises like dawn, not sudden, not loud, but gradual, as though the air itself were waking. The sound fills the room, smooth and warm, its tone shaped by years of craft and care. It moves gently through the air, reaching each listener not as noise, but as feeling. The violin sings not with words, but with breath, with memory. Each vibration seems to carry something older than the player, something that once lived in the hands of its maker, a trace of his calm, his silence, his devotion to form and sound. The melody unfolds slowly, each phrase like a step along a long and peaceful road. The notes rise and fall with the rhythm of breath, the music neither rushing nor halting. It is not performance, but meditation, the sound of life remembering itself. In the audience, faces soften, someone closes their eyes, someone else exhales without realizing it. The sound connects them all in an invisible thread, binding one heart to another without a word. The hall becomes a single body, breathing together, listening together, suspended in time. The piece continues, its themes returning like the tide. There are moments of quiet, where the sound almost disappears, leaving only the faint hum of the strings and the echo of the player's movements. The audience leans forward, drawn into that silence, finding in it something deeper than music. The stillness beneath sound, the space where all things rest. Outside, the city hums faintly, cars, footsteps, voices. But within the hall, the world has narrowed to a single tone, a vibration that feels both near and infinite. The violin sings, and in its voice there is no sadness, no triumph, only peace. The kind that comes from acceptance, from being entirely within the moment. When the final note arrives, it does not end, it simply fades, dissolving into air, like breath leaving the body. The bow lifts, the strings fall silent, and for a long moment, no one moves. The sound remains in the mind, in the pulse, in the air itself, invisible but present. Then slowly, the world returns. Hands come together, softly at first, then more certain, but still gentle. The applause is not celebration, it is gratitude, an acknowledgement of the stillness they have shared. The violinist bows, his eyes calm, his breathing steady. He knows the moment cannot be held, only remembered, like the echo of a note long after it fades. When the hall empties and the lights dim, the quiet returns. The instrument rests again in its case, the wood warm from touch. The air in the room feels changed, as though it has been rearranged by sound. And somewhere, deep in that silence, the music continues, not in notes, but in memory, in the rhythm of time. Outside, the night spreads gently across the city. The streets are calm, the windows glowing with soft light. A violin case is carried through the dark by a hand that moves with care. Each step is steady, unhurried. The music has ended, but its trace lingers in the body, in the way the player walks, in the way the air still hums faintly. Across the world, others play, a child practicing in a dim room, a student learning scales, a traveler humming a tune remembered from long ago. The same notes, the same patience, the same quiet dedication. The song travels without direction, without boundary. It belongs to no one, yet lives in everyone who listens. In a small house, far from the stage, an old man sits by a window. He has long since stopped making violins, his tools packed away, his hands resting now in stillness. But the air around him hums faintly, as if the walls themselves remember the sound. He looks out into the night, and though he cannot hear the music being played somewhere far away, he feels it. It moves within him, gentle and familiar, as if time itself were breathing beside him. He smiles, not with pride, but with peace. What he began in silence has become sound, and what was sound has returned again to silence. It is the endless circle of creation, the same rhythm found in tides, in seasons, in breath. He closes his eyes, and in the quiet of that moment, he imagines the violin resting on his bench once more, the scent of varnish, the warmth of light across the wood. The years fold in upon themselves, and the music continues, not as memory, but as presence. Somewhere, in another time, another place, someone draws a bow across strings, and the same vibration awakens again. It moves through air, through space, through hearts, carrying with it the calm of those who shaped it. The song never truly ends. It moves in circles from silence to sound and back again, from the hands that build to the hands that play, from one life to another. It is both fleeting and eternal, both fragile and infinite. And in this endless motion there is comfort. For as long as there is breath, there will be sound. As long as there is silence, there will be music waiting within it. The night deepens and the stars shine faintly above the quiet earth. Somewhere, a single note rises, soft, steady, pure, and fades again into the dark. The world holds its breath for a moment, listening. Then time moves on, slow and kind, carrying the music with it. The violin sleeps. The maker dreams. The song remains. Part 11. Closing Reflection. The world at rest, 87 minutes to 90 minutes. The night has traveled far. The world has turned slowly beneath the weight of time, and the stories we have followed of queens and healers, of cities and craftsmen have settled now into silence. The air feels softer, as if it has been shaped by every sound that came before it. Somewhere beyond the edges of thought, the last echo of a violin still hums, its vibration fading gently into peace. It is in this quiet that everything begins to connect. The woman who ruled with patience, the healer who worked by touch, the city that waited through division, the man who shaped sound from wood. All of them, though distant in time and place, shared the same truth. Each lived not through noise but through rhythm, through the slow unfolding of ordinary moments. Their lives were different, yet each one moved with the same pulse, the pulse of the earth itself, steady, enduring, kind. The air of the world is filled with traces of those lives. Every breath you take has passed through forests and cities, across seas and deserts, through time itself. It carries whispers of laughter, fragments of words, the faint memory of music. You inhale what others have exhaled long before you, not their worries, not their pain, but the calm that remains after it all has passed. In this way, you are never separate. You belong to the same slow breathing rhythm that has always been. Outside, the world is at rest. The sky stretches wide and dark, filled with quiet stars. The air moves softly, brushing against leaves, against windows, against the surface of the earth. Somewhere, waves touch the shore. Somewhere else, wind moves through grass. The sound is gentle, like the heartbeat of something infinite. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the low hum of existence beneath all things. It is the same hum that lived beneath the crown of a queen, beneath the hands of a healer, beneath the walls of a city divided, beneath the chisel of a craftsman. It has always been there, steady and patient, waiting for the world to be still enough to notice. Now, in this moment, the stillness arrives. It settles over everything soft and certain. The walls around you fade. The air grows warm and even. Your body becomes light. Your thoughts slow. You are no longer apart from the world, but a part of it, as natural as breath, as quiet as time. The world is vast, but in rest, it feels near. The same moon that touched the Nile glows tonight above other rivers, other lands. The same light that fell upon the palace of a queen now falls upon mountains and oceans, upon cities sleeping beneath it. Time folds in upon itself, and everything that was, everything that will be, meets here in the stillness of now. You are surrounded by centuries of quiet. Each age leaves behind its calm once the noise has gone. The echo of work, the rhythm of creation, the murmur of hearts that once beat with purpose, all blend together into something pure, something constant. It is the peace that remains when everything else has passed. Imagine the sound of water lapping against stone. Imagine the faint movement of wind through reeds. Imagine footsteps fading into distance and the hush that follows when the world takes a breath. This is the space between moments, the gentle pause where life gathers itself before beginning again. It is not emptiness, it is fullness without form. Somewhere in this quiet, a candle flickers. Its flame burns steady, golden and small, holding within it the same warmth that has always guided human hands, through darkness, through sleep, through time. The light does not fight the dark. It rests within it, glowing softly, content to simply be. And now you too begin to drift. Your breathing slows, your heartbeat matches the rhythm of the world. The air around you feels deep and kind. The noise of thought fades, replaced by something older, something simpler. You are not falling asleep. You are returning to balance, to quiet, to yourself. The world will continue its endless turning. Morning will come, and with it, the gentle sound of life beginning again. The same sunlight that touched the rivers of Egypt, the cobblestones of Berlin, the wood of a violin will touch your skin. The same wind that carried the laughter of long-ago voices will move softly through your hair. You are part of this endless motion, the great circle of sound and silence, of waking and resting, of being and becoming. For now, though, there is only peace. The world rests and you rest with it. The stars hold steady above you. The air hums with the faint pulse of time. The night, vast and tender, closes gently around you, and every sound, every breath, every memory drifts into calm. If you listen closely, you may still hear the faintest echo of a violin, one final note stretched across the dark. It does not rise or fall, it simply is. A sound without end, a song that has always been. And as it fades, it leaves behind silence, not empty, but full of life, waiting quietly for the next beginning. The world, at last, is at rest.